Hi, this is Elected, the podcast, and it's a little bit, I'm going to say off the top, I'm a little bit nervous because this is the first time I've ever recorded one with someone in real life before. They're sitting like right beside me. So it's just a little bit different, a little bit fun. So welcome. In the spirit of reconciliation, it's important to me on my own personal journey to acknowledge and share that I am personally and professionally committed to learning the history of colonialism and the ongoing systemic violence against Indigenous peoples. We are today on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. Today's guest is Karina Gould, and I'm very excited. I'm trying not to I'm trying to contain myself. Before we get into it, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'll also start by saying, if anyone is listening and you are interested in becoming a sponsor of this podcast, please reach out to me. It's something that I need in order to keep it growing and to be able to do a better job of creating better quality content and having guests like Minister Gould on. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. So if you can start off by letting everyone who know who you are and the amazing things that you do, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a huge fan and really love what you're doing. I think it's really important. And I think it's a great space, not just physically, but also virtually, to bring women and allies together that are interested in politics and interested in advancing feminism. So thank you for doing that. I think you've inspired a lot of Canadians. And I know a lot of female politicians kind of feel seen. So thank you for doing that. So as was mentioned, my name is Karina Gould. I'm the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development at the federal government. I'm also the Member of Parliament for Burlington. And I'm the mom to Oliver. He just turned 4. He was born on March 8th. I like to say he's a born feminist. He chose the date, not me. I'm really delighted to be here.
I have a Benjamin whose birthday is March 6th.
Oh, nice.
So they're almost, and I did pick that day because otherwise he would still be in my body.
Yeah.
I like to say that I had to evict him.
we were getting close because he was, I guess, 5 days overdue, and I was getting to the point where I was going to go for an inducement, but nope, he decided to come at midnight. It was like 12:32 a.m. on March 8th, and he was like, all right, I'm ready. Yeah, so he's born at 9:32.
It's so interesting because my first William, who's 4, he came like 3 weeks early. My husband and I had just sat down to watch like the Colbert show, and my water broke like completely naturally. And so when I was pregnant the second time, I was thinking like, okay, if this happened once, like, it's going to happen again. 2 vaginal sweeps and an induction later. Yeah. I think he would still be in my body.
I had to have my water broken, and that's one of the worst memories that I
really
had. It was so painful. It was
they did that to me, and I had no idea. I didn't even know.
It was awful. So I'm glad it wasn't your experience.
I like actually to think that I'm not sure maybe if Oliver's like this, but how they arrive is kind of representative of their personalities.
Totally. Oliver is like super cuddly and like very much attached to me, and I feel like that was exactly the way that he was from before he was born until after. Like he was kind of like, no, I'm good, like I don't need, I'm comfortable. And he's always like that.
William, who came out like 3 weeks early, is like just ready to go on. Like he just anyways, this is not what the podcast is about. This is not a birth story. We could, I guess, spend like an hour talking about that, but the childcare deals that you have signed, every province and I believe now every territory has signed on. So the last one being Ontario. So congratulations. I can't imagine what it was like to negotiate every single one of those deals.
Well, every single negotiation was totally different. I only negotiated the last 5. So Minister Hussein, who's my predecessor, negotiated the first 8. Those ones happened very quickly. So, starting with British Columbia, and I think maybe Saskatchewan or Manitoba was the last before the federal election.
Mm-hmm.
So in like a 6-week period, all of those negotiations were done. And then I negotiated the easier ones, I guess, New Brunswick, first Alberta, New Brunswick, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, and then finally Ontario. I guess I shouldn't say easier; they were a bit more complicated, but
Yeah.
So it was great, and it's one of the things that I still kind of can't believe is that this is it's historic that we have this, but this is the biggest social policy change in Canada since the advent of Medicare, right? Like in 50 years, like this is the biggest social policy change that Canadians are going to experience. And that's pretty cool. But it's also, when Minister Freeland introduced the budget a year ago, right? $30 billion over the next 5 years, $9 billion ongoing thereafter. We negotiated all 13 agreements in a year.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? It took 10 years to get all the provinces and territories signed up for Medicare.
Well, I even think about it in the context of like a free trade agreement.
Yeah.
Right? Like dealing with all of those, like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's really, really exciting. And I mean, of course, here in Alberta, families are already, seeing the difference. And I know you spoke with Minister Schultz recently, but I had coffee with her in Edmonton before this. And, there's a lot going on, and it's really, really exciting. And each province and territory has milestones that they have to achieve over the next 5 years. Everyone has to reduce fees on average by 50% by the end of this year. They need to create more spaces because it's not just about affordability. It's also about making sure that those spaces are available, because I know for parents across the country, wait lists for licensed care can go on for years, right? And you and I were talking before we started recording, but it's for some parents, particularly for women, particularly for mothers, they might be spending more paying for childcare than what they're earning, right? And so they're actually going into debt to pay for childcare so that they can stay in the workforce, right?
Yeah. And I mean, so many people like to frame childcare as kind of a luxury type item. And it's actually like fundamental to like families. It's not like a, do we want to build a monorail? Like, that's not what it's like, like in terms of or something crazy. It's like, it's really necessary.
It's fundamental, not just to families, but to society, to our economy, right? Like, we don't give early childhood educators the value and the credit that they deserve, right? I mean, they, in many places are underpaid, right? They're undervalued. But if we think about it, like during the pandemic, they went to work so we could go to work. Yeah. Right? Like I don't know what it was like in Alberta, but in Ontario, childcare centers were closed in the first wave of the pandemic from, March 2020 to July or August 2020. I worked as a cabinet minister, as a member of parliament from home with my 2-year-old, right? That was not easy. Yeah. I know what that's like. That was, and I just had one child, and I had a husband who, did the majority of the childcare because I was working 12 to 16 hours a day, right? Like it was really, really hard. And I can say that, the relief and gratitude that I felt when childcare is reopened, and my family felt, and they went to work so that the rest of us could go to work. And this is why I think the childcare agreements were able to happen when they did, right? Because for 50 years, women and their allies in this country have been fighting for affordable care. Right? They've been fighting for that. Like the Royal Commission on the Status of Women came out in 1950, right? Asking for universal childcare, right? Advocates have been fighting for decades for this. Actually, when I was in Edmonton, Donna from, I think it's the Alberta, she showed me this newspaper article from 1986, right? That was all about childcare. And the headline was childcare is not a luxury, it's a necessity.
Yeah.
Right. But like women have been fighting for this for so long. And it took, unfortunately, a global pandemic for the rest of society to realize like, oh, actually this matters because people won't go to work without it.
Well, and also I think that being in a home where everyone was present, because so often of the unpaid labor burden falls onto the shoulders of women still to this day, and disproportionately so during the pandemic. But all of a sudden people, husbands, fathers, partners, whoever had been able to, leave the home, suddenly was like, wow, is this what it's like? Like, is this how hard it is?
Or business owners and bosses who were like, listening to their employees with, kids in the background and seeing how stressed their employees were, because not only were they trying to work, but they were also trying to care for their children.
Well, it was no longer invisible.
No, exactly. It like brought, it's funny, Minister Freeland, sometimes when she talks about me, will say, when she had her kids, it was like she was trying to pretend they didn't exist, right? And then like when I had Oliver, it was like, nope, guess what? I'm mom and he's coming everywhere with me, right? And so it was like totally breaking down those barriers between like public and private life. And it was just like, yeah, guess what? This is the reality.
Yeah.
And like, we can't hide it because we're all here.
Well, it went from being like the dad who famously did that interview in Korea, and he had his child like run in, and it was like a viral sensation, and but that was like the daily reality for like everyone. Yeah. That wasn't a viral video. It was like our daily lives.
Yeah.
And for me, my experience was from March of 2020 until September, because I was the one who had the most job flexibility.
Right.
I was caregiver, and we didn't have any childcare options. And then so I would be with the boys all during the day, and then I would do Madame Premier at night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I talk about it, I actually get emotional. I'm not right now, but sometimes when I think about it, because it was so hard.
Totally.
And for you too, it must have been.
Oh, the stress, like just the stress on your family was, it was so hard. And I have so many memories of, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, because for my son, like he's used to me not being home, right? Like I travel a lot in Ottawa, but when I'm home and I'm present, right? And for him, it was really hard that I was home, but I wasn't available, right? And so I would like hide in the basement to take all of my calls, and I would hear him calling for me and crying for me. And my poor husband was like trying to, distract him. And then at one point, like he was crying so much, I had to stop my meeting, and I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, I just have to go get my son. And I brought him down, and this lovely person on the other side was like, like it was a Zoom meeting, and he was like, do you think Oliver would like a song?
Oh.
And I was like, I think so. And he just like, he pulled up a guitar,
really?
And he started singing like You Are My Sunshine. And it was like that moment where I was like, yeah, we're all going through this.
Wow.
It was just like this moment of humanity where it was like, okay, I actually don't have to hide and pretend that this is hard. Like I think everyone's just
has a better understanding of it now. I think that's so beautiful. Yeah. Also that person must be like
a saint,
and not just like a really genuinely beautiful person. Yeah. But I think that's also kind of a good segue into like, how did, like you as a mom, but also as a person, and like being now, I think we've reached hopefully a point where, because we just like have exposed everyone that we've ever been on a Zoom with to our families and like our daily realities, to like being women in politics and business and in whatever sphere you may be, and just being like, this is the way it is, and like I'm not going to necessarily apologize for this anymore. So like, how do you deal with that?
It's a good question, because so I was the first cabinet minister to have a baby while holding that office. And so that was very funny because my husband and I, when I decided to run for politics, he was like, yeah, you go for it. I'll support you. But like, I want to have a family. Like that's important. And that was important to me too. And so we had kind of decided we were going to start having a family. And then the prime minister appointed me to cabinet. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
It's all at once.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of funny because, you know, the second person I told I was pregnant was the prime minister of
Really?
Canada. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
That's true.
because I was like, yeah, right. Yeah. So, I didn't want him to have to find out another way.
And what I'm curious, like, what was his reaction?
So I called him and I said, you know, Prime Minister, I'm just wondering what the policy is for a cabinet minister who is going to go on maternity leave. Mm-hmm. And he just was like, oh my gosh, Karina, oh my gosh. He said, you know what? We're going to make this work. Whatever it takes, we're going to make it work so that you can be successful in this.
That's so great.
And he did, right? Yeah. And, you know, I'm really appreciative of that because I think it could have gone really differently if I hadn't have had the support from him and his team, because the whole like machinery of government had to adapt to this situation that like has never happened before and would not have been acceptable, right? Yeah. But because he was there championing it and saying like, no, everyone is going to make this work. It did. It was still super hard. I'm sure. Don't get me wrong. It was still super hard. But he was incredibly, incredibly supportive and really, you know, made a point and an effort to say like, we are going to support this so that Karina's she's not just the first, but she's also not the last. Right. And so that was amazing. But I have to tell you, like I was very self-conscious about being pregnant on the Hill because there are not a lot of pregnant people walking around the Hill. And then I was really worried about the reaction of my community as well. Right. In Burlington, which did not pan out. Like everyone was super supportive, super excited. Like, I feel like Oliver has been adopted by the whole community and everyone, like, not everyone, but like most people, you know, like love him and are excited about him. And they're actually, I think, proud to have a member of parliament who has kind of like, you know, said like, yeah, I'm just going to do this. And so it's been a wonderful experience. Of course, I've had people who, when I knock on doors, would be like, well, where's your baby? And I'm like, well, it's not like I left him at home by himself.
Where's your baby?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
where are your kids?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, a few people like that, but like 95% of people have been amazing and supportive. And I also think that in many ways, like the Canadian public is much further advanced than Parliament, right? And the kind of chattering class in politics in Canada. And so, you know, most people would be like, oh, well, how long are you going to take for your maternity leave? And I'd be like, oh, I'm going to take 8 weeks. And they were like, why aren't you taking a year? And I'm like, oh, we don't get a year. Like, we don't get any time. And they would just be horrified, right? That like, that was the case. And actually one cool story is that in June of 2019, then Government House Leader Bardish Chagger introduced a motion. It received unanimous consent. No one batted an eye. I stood up and applauded loudly because we passed parental leave for members of parliament unanimously in the House of Commons. So that's, you know, something that wouldn't have happened otherwise. But then it was really, I was super self-conscious when I like rolled up to parliament and pulled out a stroller and was walking around the Hill with a stroller. But again, you know, it was generally a positive experience. It was something that like I had to stand my ground in a lot of places because, you know, we have boats that go for 24 hours sometimes. And I was breastfeeding a 3-month-old. Yeah. And I had to say like, no, I'm going home. Right. Yeah. Like, so.
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of, I mean, that's the part of politics that can change. Like the only reason why politics can't change is because someone is saying, no, it has to be this way. Yeah. And the question then is, well, why does it have to be this way? And then the answer is generally, well, because this is the way it's always been done. Yeah. Or you got into it knowing that this is what it would be like. But according to whose like unwritten rule book, or even if there is a written rule, like, well, let's change it.
But let's like, so, you know, most of the rules in Parliament were established in the 19th century.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? When it was all men. Yeah. Mostly white.
No,
right?
There were no washrooms for women.
There were no washrooms for women. When they would get on a train, go to Ottawa for months at a time, right? Leave their families behind. They go back for
without a second thought. And no one's saying, where's your child?
No, exactly.
They were never asked that.
And, you know, we're at a milestone. We now have over 100 members of parliament that are female. Super exciting, right? That's great. I think Marcy Ian was here. I think she was, I don't know if she was number 99 or number 100, but like, you know, really exciting, you know, like we're breaking down those barriers, but we also like, we can also change how parliament works because it's not just about getting more women into parliament, it's getting them to stay there. And I'll remember the first summer that I had Oliver, and I was, you know, it was tough. Like I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the balance here? Because as a parliamentarian, you feel like you need to do everything, right? And I certainly did. And I tried my best to be everywhere. But I was like, I have a 4-month-old baby. Like, how do I manage this in a way that's healthy for me and for my child? Right. And I'm still being a good
naps. Babies need like so many naps.
It's unbelievable. And like most of the time I just like put Oliver in the snuggly and like, you know, until he was 6 months old, that was fine. Like he was super adaptable, like whatever, he went everywhere. But at 6 months, he needed more engagement than just being like strapped to me. And he made himself known in that case. Like in meetings, he was like, no, I don't want to be in these meetings anymore. Like pay attention to me. But I called Sheila Cox because she was the first MP to give birth as a member of parliament back in 1988. And I called her and I just said, like, I need some guidance here. like I'm kind of swimming blind. Like I need some guidance as to what to do and how to manage this. And she gave me some good advice. And then she posed the question to me, like, what do you want to accomplish here? And I said to her, well, you know, I've got this legislation. I really want to get it passed. And she was like, no. Like, what do you want to be different about your experience and impact in parliament? And I said, I want it to be easier for the next person to do this because it's really hard. Like this system is not built for us, right? Like this institution is not built for women. But it's definitely not built for mothers. And she said, okay, well then make a change. Right. And so if I can think about those changes, you know, and it wasn't just me, but, you know, the family room in parliament, which is one step, it's not quite enough. Right. But parental leave for members of parliament, like, you know, those things. And then, you know, this like hybrid parliament, you know, if we can keep some of these aspects so that if, you know, you yourself are ill, right? You don't have to be wheeled in on a stretcher to parliament to vote. That's happened, right? You know, you can vote maybe remotely. If you have, you know, you're going through chemo treatments, you don't have to like risk your health for this. If you have a family member that's sick or ill, or you give birth, like you don't have to rush back. Like you can, there's ways for us to actually modernize parliament that doesn't get rid of any of the necessary things that we have to do as MPs, but like makes it more human. And I think will actually lead to better members of parliament because, you know, the divorce rate for parliamentarians is like over 75%.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's huge.
Right. But I mean, not surprising.
Right? But like, why do we want that? Right? You know, don't we want to have parliamentarians who can be well-rounded?
Yes.
You know, and have family lives.
I say that and in the back of my mind last night on Netflix, I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but I just finished watching Anatomy of a Scandal. Have you seen it? Oh my God. Talking about parliamentarians and like it's anyways, that's like not in any way, that's not like what you want. That's at all. That's like so interesting. And it's so great to hear. And I just want to add in one extra layer from a former staffer with my former staffer hat on, is that some of those policies need to also trickle down. Right. Because we also need more women working, you know, not only in the bureaucracy, but it's political staff.
Totally.
So
and making it an environment where, you know, people in all their diversity can thrive.
Exactly.
Right. And, you know, I always think that like, you know, my job as a parliamentarian is, you know, I'm not going to necessarily win every battle, but I'm going to fight for them. But we need to have that diversity represented in the House of Commons, because we need to have people with lived experience who can talk about the policies that we're thinking about and how it's going to impact them and their lives. And we need to have staff who have those experiences as well. And so like this institution was created in 1867, right? Hasn't changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
And there are changes that we can make to adapt to the 21st century that will reflect the 21st century. And it will still uphold all of those, you know, conventions and values and important roles that we have to play, but that also, you know, don't exclude half the population.
Exactly.
Or don't make it so that you have women who have to choose between a career in politics or having a family. Like that choice should not have to happen.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I completely
Or for
agree.
men too, right?
Yeah, it's whoever wants that choice.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, you're a woman or, you know, you're gay or like, and you have a kid, you and your partner have a family, like we need everyone at the table.
Yeah.
And going back to what we started the conversation with, which was childcare, all of these things different, like there are just so many things that still need to be changed or tinkered with, that will create a more vibrant, a more equitable, a more diverse political system. And like no one will, even if you don't think that you will benefit, you honestly will. Everyone will benefit from that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Right. And I mean, you hear it from CEOs of companies all the time. They say, okay, when I have more diverse voices around the table, like we actually do better. Right. And that's the same in politics as well.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Well, I know your staff gave, I'm just waving, someone just like came in and I forgot to let her know that this was going on. So we have to unfortunately wrap things up. I just want to thank you for like coming in today. And I'm so happy that you're like the first person I get to talk to like this, like
in person.
We're like in the same space. I think it definitely, I mean, I want to do this all the time now because I think it makes for a better experience.
You were nervous about being in person, but it's like a more,
it's kind of, it's
right?
natural. Yeah.
It's like we're having coffee.
Yeah. Well, also it's just a different dynamic. So thank you so much. I know there's so many other things that we didn't even get a chance to talk to about. But hopefully maybe we can do this again.
Yeah.
And then it's on my like dream list to come to Ottawa and do like a pop-up shop.
Cool.
So maybe we can do round 2 then.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll look forward to seeing you in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This is great. And like, keep it up. As I said, like, I think for a lot of women involved in politics, like your story is like very special to us. It's very special to us.
I really appreciate that because like, when I like make something or design something or create something, it's always like, A, would I wear this myself? But also B, like, do I think that other women in Canadian politics or just women in politics would,
I just found out it's your birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. That's why I was like, I like, there's 2 edges to it. It's like one, I'm 39 today. So like getting very close to like 40. So that's like a little bit of a mental thing. So like one part of me loves birthdays and the other part of me doesn't really like birthdays. But today, like honestly, having you be here today was like my birthday present.
Well, happy birthday. I'm so glad I could celebrate it with
thanks.
you. And like, I always feel we should be grateful for every year that we get to get older.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, getting older is definitely a good thing.
Yeah.
Like even today when I was like putting on like my very minimal skincare routine, I was like, 27-year-old me or 24-year-old me, like never would have imagined. Right. And maybe the same for you.
Yeah.
Like you're a federal cabinet minister, right? Like,
oh no, when people ask me that, like, did you like, how did you get to where you are? I'm like, I don't know. It just happened. But I mean, and not that it just happened. Obviously, there was a lot of hard work that went into it. But if you had asked like 17-year-olds, so I did. Oh, you're open.
This is live.
Yeah,
so someone's now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can answer.
Okay, my son is answering.
I guess this is the beauty of doing a live recording. Yeah.
But no, if someone had asked me, like, I remember when I went to Parliament Hill with Forum for Young Canadians when I was 15 and like was walking around there and being like, this is where I want to be. Right. But I never imagined myself as a member of parliament. I always thought of myself as a staffer. And if you had told me like, no, you are going to be not only a member of parliament, you're going to be a cabinet minister, I would have kind of laughed because I didn't see myself because I didn't have points of reference.
I know, because there were so few women.
Yeah, for women or young women.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, oh, well, maybe one day I'll get elected, but it'll be when I'm in my 50s or 60s after I've had my career. I never thought it would be when I was 28.
Yeah. Yeah. I applied, fun fact, I applied for Forum for Young Canadians and got denied. What? I know. Like, anyways. So that's why I need to make Ottawa, obviously.
Okay, you have to come to Ottawa.
And
you know what? I feel like women parliamentarians are going to welcome you with open arms. They're going to be really excited to have you there.
I need to make it happen.
As will staffers.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah.
I really don't know if I should like look at the camera or look at you, but this was another episode of Elected. Thank you for joining us, and thanks so much for stopping by.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Now I get to press the button.